Right, now this will tell us. And that's pretty conclusive. Still going. Close. I think he's got it down.
How strong is he?
Welcome back to the Pick and Go podcast, your one-stop shop for all things rugby union and certainly Super Rugby. And we're not too far away from the start of Super Rugby Pacific 2025. I'm joined once again by our good friend Ben Searle of Searley Talk Sports. Searley, welcome aboard.
Yeah, I must be getting extra points. That's 2 from 2 now, where I'm the only other regular on the panel. Surely I get a bonus point under this new playoff system. It's got to be factored in.
Well, usually Piri Wipu would be sitting next to me here in the studio, but he's been called away. Look, I don't know for sure. I'm guessing maybe the Hurricanes have called him up because they seem to be short of 10 at the moment. We'll find out a wee bit later. But what we have got, we've got another former All Black, not a Hurricane, but that's okay. We accept him as he is. Our good friend, Jeff Wilson. G'day, Jeff.
Thanks very much. As I am. Highlanders through and through. Don't worry about this, any of these other teams. Great to be back. Looking forward to another. Geez, it feels like forever, doesn't it? Since I've watched, since we've seen it, New Zealand rugby back on screen. Let's go, baby. I'm all for it.
I do have to say that England-France game on the weekend got me excited for footy again because that was exceptional.
Unbelievable, right? Great start to the year for both weekends, actually. There's been some real quality. I actually had a chat this morning to Will Greenwood, who's a wonderful, articulate, British and Irish Lion, English fan, but he's talking about the game in the Northern Hemisphere right now, and he said it's certainly fun to watch. And if England win a game and they found a way to win a big game, because that's what it was, all of a sudden the whole landscape changes. So, and I couldn't agree with you more. The first 2 weekends of Six Nations have been great.
You mentioned England, and that was a big, big win against the French. But the Italians... do we give them the credit, or is it Wales are in one of the biggest holes of, I guess, in the history of Welsh rugby?
You go, Jeff. You go, Jeff. I'm trying to deflect because I feel sorry for Warren Gatland, but yeah, Italy, they do play an exciting brand of rugby when they're on, and they've been one of those teams that's been on the improve. I think they would have been disappointed with their showing at the World Cup and tournaments like that, but they show when they play with that flair and razzle, they're a good side. I was nervous for them going in as favourites because often that's probably a game where they would trip up, but they got the job done, and yeah, it's chaos for Wales. I can't see it getting any better anytime soon either, because that was the game they would have targeted to win throughout the Six Nations.
Yeah, all of the insight coming out of the Northern Hemisphere around Wales is the fact that this has sort of been 2 years where they've really done nothing to sort of resurrect their whole program. It sounds as though people on the outside are asking massive questions about what Welsh rugby have been doing in the last 5 years in terms of trying to protect their game, improve their game. Obviously, that's why the players went on strike. A number retired early from their international careers because they had enough. So, I think this is Italy being better and Wales being worse. And look, Italy were favoured to win on the weekend, and they should have, and they did. The big question mark for Wales is will they have anybody in the British and Irish Lions? At the moment, you'd have to say, just from a confidence point of view, for a player coming in. So they've got, 4 games to try and find something remarkable against, 3 games left, against some really quality opposition. So I don't know where they find that from and where they get a win. But yeah, for Warren Gatland, I feel very sorry for him because clearly this is bigger than just him. There has to be something a lot deeper.
If we're talking about international coaches, we should probably mention Joe Schmidt, who announced that he'll be standing down as coach of the Wallabies at the end of the season. He still had a year or 2 to go on the contract. So is there anything you can read into that, Jeff?
I think his intention is always reasonably flexible, given, and he's been like that for a while now. Once he finished with his big stint in Ireland, everything he's gone into, I don't think he's got a challenging family situation with his son, so he wants to make sure that he's around. He wants to be around for his family. So I think it's hard for him because I know he's trying to be part of something bigger. But I think ultimately he's on the direction of setting Australian rugby up. They're in a good position. I think they'll be really competitive this year. And if he wasn't going to stay through to the Rugby World Cup, right, now's the time to go. He couldn't hang on and then go. He had to make a decision. And I think his decision is the right one. Get through the into the Rugby Championship. Probably in those half a dozen test matches, bring someone into the fold who you think's going to come over and just say, look, maybe hand over the reins, or end of year tour, someone else takes it. But I don't think we read too much into it. I think everything that Joe does right now it's almost very much like a year by year. And so this is just, I think for him, he feels as though he would have done enough to set them up.
Shirley, welcome back, Eddie Jones.
No way. I think it could be a welcome back, though. It could be welcome back Michael Cheika. I think there's potential there. But I can't remember an Aussie coaching resignation where I was actually pretty gutted about it, because I was so excited about what the Wallabies showed at the end of that year tour. I was excited that under Joe Schmidt there's potential where we could have these barnstorming Bledisloe Cup games again, because they'd shown massive improvement. So I was quite sad to see that news, but like Jeff said, it's a year by year thing for him at the moment, and his priorities with his family, which is 100% fair.
I'd love to see Dave Rennie go back.
Yeah.
I really would. Like you talked to, they felt the last time when they brought Eddie in, before that World Cup, you talk to the players, they felt they were starting to turn a corner. They felt, that group of guys were starting, and he'd given them the pathway. I imagine the challenging thing for them is if they appoint someone out of their Super Rugby franchises, it just hurts them a little bit. They've just gone down to 4 teams. All of a sudden, Dan McKellar thinks got the Waratahs. They've just got this nice little group, and then you're going to disrupt someone else again. They're taking them out of Super Rugby, which for them, I think right now is really, really important. They've given themselves an opportunity to be successful this year by reducing to 4. It'd be nice to think they can get some continuity in their Super game, because I think they're getting more and more aligned as well with Australian rugby because of the financial pressures. They've all had to come together a lot more. And that's why I think what you will see is that there's a lot more cohesion between Super and the establishment.
How good is this? Pick and Go helping out Australian rugby solve all the issues they have. I'm really happy because I know they're big listeners of the Pick and Go. Look, we're speaking right now on a Tuesday morning, the day after the Super Bowl. And it was, well, we should probably touch on what happened. It was one-sided almost from the outset. The Philadelphia Eagles defense was just they didn't have to blitz, but it seemed like they were blitzing every single time because there was always at least one defensive player getting through that leaky Kansas City offensive line, and Patrick Mahomes had no time whatsoever. I thought they might change a few things up in the second half. But maybe there were no answers for Kansas City. If you look back on the Super Bowl, Searley, what were your outtakes?
Yeah, pretty much just that. That pass rush was deadly from the Eagles. They got 6 sacks without blitzing once, which is crazy. And everyone knew this Kansas City offensive line isn't that strong. But yeah, they got exposed there, and I think Philly had the perfect game plan for it. I thought Hurts looked really composed whenever he was pressured as well. I feel a little sorry for Patty Mahomes just because he didn't have too many opportunities there because he was just under so much pressure. As a neutral fan, I was glad to see Philly win it just because I was getting sick of KC winning it. For those that love dynasties and things like that, I wouldn't have minded have seen it, the first ever three-peat, because that would have been quite cool as well. But yeah, I think Philly were the better team all year in terms of these two sides. I thought KC were pretty patchy at times. They just relied on Mahomes pulling off these crazy wins. So I was happy for Philly. Saquon Barkley's birthday as well. I think it was Cooper DeJean's birthday as well. So a nice little touch there. I saw them shotgunning bears in the sheds too, which is always a nice touch. So they deserve it.
A nice touch.
You're a Dunners man, Jeff. It's a nice touch. It's a nice touch.
I'm not sure it's a nice touch when you're doing one. It's doing multiples. I was disappointed, obviously, because I would have loved to have seen a better contest. What I was interested to see is exactly how they would handle the threats of Saquon Barkley. And it's like they spent so much time focusing on taking that away that it just opened up opportunities for Hurts to hurt them, excuse the pun, in other ways. And that's what he did. He picked them apart. They found spaces for his wide receivers, and his offensive line protected him really, really well. So to me, it was always going to be that there was so much chat about the schemes that Kansas City defensively were going to run, where ultimately Hurts got the ride he needed, and his accuracy. And look, I hate it when there's a couple of late touchdowns that make the score look even closely respectable, like they were in the contest, because they weren't. This was one-sided, and all year Patrick Mahomes had found a way, even when they'd got in trouble in the fourth quarters and they're down 7-10, they'd done something special. I think their luck just ran out. It just ran out again against the better team that was well and truly in the zone. So for me, look, it's disappointing for Mahomes, but good for the league. You don't want anyone, I think, in this day and age, in the way that people get sometimes over things pretty quickly. Hurts, played amazing, 2 seasons ago in the Super Bowl final, but didn't get the job done. He's got it done now.
Yeah, I guess there's that old saying that offense will get you to the Super Bowl, defense will win you the Super Bowl. And I think that was a great example yesterday in New Orleans. Look, prior to that game, there was talk about Patrick Mahomes challenging Tom Brady for the title of the GOAT. Jeff, how much does that loss, I guess, hurt Mahomes' claim to being the GOAT, or challenge, or at the very least challenging Tom Brady for that title? I don't remember Tom Brady and the Patriots ever getting smashed in a Super Bowl, even the ones that they lost. They were always in the game, and you just couldn't say that yesterday. Yeah,
I think you'd have to say it does. Because it just for the nature and the fact that how ineffectual he was, because, to get to that point, you've shown throughout the year against some quality teams, you've found ways to still win. What was their record in the end? 14-2, or I think, that was almost 14-3. That was their record to the regular season. You're going, well, hold on, they've always found a way. Why couldn't he find a way in this situation? To your point, if you start talking about the greats, whether in whatever sport, they usually still have an impact on the game, and he didn't have an impact on the game yesterday in the most critical position. So, look, I think Tom Brady can breathe a sigh of relief for another season, take another breath and go, you know what, that conversation's not alive. It'll come again next year. I think it's just literally that'll be put to the side. I'll be interested to see the reactions out of the States, because they love a deep dive and things like this. They love a GOAT debate. And so all of a sudden, this will go, well, first and foremost, it happened was yesterday that this conversation is done for a lot of people until Mahomes gets back there.
Searley, your take on the GOAT conversation?
I've seen some stuff already out of the States, Bill Simmons and co saying put a line through it. Tom Brady's 100% the GOAT now. I'm more interested to see next season how Mahomes bounces back, because he's an ultimate competitor. He hates losing. He won't be sleeping much this offseason. He's going to be in the lab trying to dial in. KC obviously have some issues they need to address. Can they pull that off to fix these problems, to give him a chance to go back and win it again? Yeah, or has their time just run out, and is everyone else just on that level now? He's a little bit older, and that's just the way sport works. It's going to be really interesting to see next season how Mahomes and this Chiefs side come back, because, yeah, if you've seen any footage of him, I think it was that quarterbacks documentary, like, the bloke's a freak. He just loves winning, so it could be crazy next year.
But winning is hard, right?
Very hard.
Really hard. And I think there's a reason it hadn't been done before. It's just hard in a professional environment in America where loyalties run thin, and so it's a matter of you'll see critical players in key positions like Barclay's a prime example. They needed a running back to change the dynamic with Hurts in Philadelphia. They got the guy that they needed to all of a sudden have multiple threats, and they've looked so much more multidimensional this year. So it's now, is there someone out there who's going, you know what, I'm the guy to shore up the offensive line, but guess what? You're going to have to pay me. And there's only so much to go around, and everyone's got deep pockets. And so it's really hard to get to get everything right, all the pieces of the puzzle, all sports are the same.
Right. We better talk some rugby now on a rugby podcast. And staying with the GOAT theme, if you look at Super Rugby, the history of Super Rugby, who's the GOAT of Super Rugby? Searley, we'll start with you.
Well, straight away, whenever you say GOAT, there's two names which pop up for me, and that's Richie McCaw and Dan Carter, but that's just because that's my generation. But when you look at it and break it down, everyone says Tom Brady's the GOAT because of titles, right? So if you're going off titles, it's Richie Moana. 7 straight titles, 4th highest point scorer in Super Rugby history. That's pretty hard to go past, and there's a chance he comes back and wins another as well, which would probably add further to that debate. So Super Rugby specifically, if you're going off championships, you got to say Richie Moana are part of that crazy Crusaders run, don't you? I don't know. I want to say Dan Carter, but...
Jeff, are we looking at a player in blue and gold, or what are you thinking?
I wanted to say Jeff Wilson as well. I just want to throw that out there.
We won a title. I mean,
and Pity Whippu and Steve Devine.
Conversation. I mean, like, I think, and then there's these are all, it comes down to the most influential players to me. And as much as Dan Carter and Richie McCaw are two of New Zealand's greatest ever rugby players, when it comes to Super Rugby, they're not as influential as other players have been in terms of leading teams to titles and changing the dynamic of where that franchise has gone. They were part of an era of Crusader rugby which was really consistent of its performances, but nothing like the Richie Moana era. Nothing like that. He is in the most pivotal position in the biggest moments. He's clearly the most influential and best player that I've seen in Super Rugby because it was every single week. And yes, he's part of a really established and successful organisation which put together a fantastic program of bringing through talent and multiple All Blacks on every single level and layer. But he still had to deliver in the big games, and that's what he did. So, look, I think there are other players. Like I would look at, say, an Aaron Smith, for example. He led the Highlanders, I believe, changed the course of the Highlanders and took them to being more consistent and competitive for how many years when he was there? Probably you're talking 8 to 9 years, and they've won a title. You could go back to the early days, when I was playing, you start looking, going, well, for the first 2 seasons, the Blues dominated, and you're thinking to yourself, well, if you go and watch them play, Zinzan was outstanding, he's remarkable, his impact on the game, if you watch them play and how he virtually, how your 10 runs the show? Well, number 8 was running the show. He'd already tactically worked out what was happening next. So there are players through generations. When the Crusaders turned their woeful start in Super Rugby, Andrew Mertens was a massive part of that. He led them to the that title in '99, and he was a consistent part of it for a long, long time. So out of Australia, George Gregan. I can't believe I said his name out loud. But ultimately, same thing, part of a dynasty with the Brumbies for a long, long time, incredibly competitive. Him and Larkham together were fantastic. But I don't think once you start putting all the numbers together, all the points together, all the titles together, Richie Moana, to me, stands head and shoulders above.
I'm glad you mentioned Gregan because Searley did talk to me about Gregan just the other day, and he remembers that tackle he made on you in the corner as you were...
I never said a word, mate.
What about a South African?
Oh, way to change the subject.
Were they in Super Rugby? I can hardly remember.
Stain, maybe?
Mornay, absolutely, with the Bulls, I mean, you get a bit sensitive because we're not mentioning too many forwards, But if you went through, say, the Bulls, for example, Victor Matfield, really, really incredibly influential how, the impact he had on a game through his role that he had. I tell you, there's another guy, and it's another Crusader, but Sam Whitelock. If you actually go through and look at, the longevity he had clearly in the game and the level that he played at. And we should never forget where a lot of these titles were won, and they were won up front. Whether the Crusaders used their scrum, whether or not they used their line-out defence. I mean, they took a title off the Blues just with line-out defence
Yeah.
at Eden Park. So he's the guy that I put a bit of a caveat on going, you know what, it's easy to forget Sam Whitelock because it wasn't flashy, but it was influential, and his was probably over a longer period of time than Richie Moana. If you go and look at it, would they have won without him in the heart of it? You'd have to ask questions. So I think for me, but you're right. There are a number of great South African players, probably just didn't win enough titles other than the Bulls, right?
I think Richie Moana, he's not just in the conversation. He thoroughly deserves to be at the top of most lists. But Jeff, you did bring up a very, very good. He was playing behind one of the best packs in Super Rugby history, and so sometimes their work does go slightly unnoticed. I bet you it didn't go unnoticed by the guys in the Crusaders backline who were playing behind that pack, but sometimes from a spectator point of view, all we see is the end result of all that hard work and Richie Moana slicing through the opposition defence because they've been on the back foot for so long and they haven't been able to just get that line set again.
Yeah, I'm not. So I think there were individual pieces of brilliance from Moana. I'll never forget in Christchurch, when he did the quick kick-off to himself, where he's made a break 30 metres from his own line, when someone's tried to charge down a kick and gone a little bit aggressive on him and he's stepped and gone, there are times, I think there's been moments of brilliance where he hasn't just been a game manager. He hasn't been just the guy who's driven them around the park. It's bam, he's up and gone. He's done something where he's recognised and instinctively he's taken off and created something out of nothing. Those players are sort of rare. I mean, another guy I'd say, is a Ben Smith for the same thing down in Dunedin for the Highlanders. That all of a sudden they do something that not anybody else would do on a daily basis. But look, it's a hard one in rugby because you rely so heavily on all the other people around you. To be able to go out and showcase your skill set. And there's no doubt he had a platform on a weekly basis that allowed him to do that,
Can I add to that too? I think, the first year they won it with him at the helm, 2017. The year before, the Canes won it. Bodie was the best 10 in the country. I think the Crusaders finished, 7th or 6th the year before. So he's kind of been there. He's been that influence to help lead them to the titles as well, which I think is another tick in his box. It's not like he came into a side that had just won the comp, then gone on this big run too. So maybe that's another tick in his box as well.
Right. Pre-season. It's over now. We've seen a few of the teams play a few games. Some of the Australian teams went up north. We've seen the New Zealand teams play a few games. When it came to pre-season, you were probably still playing golf at the time, Jeff. How seriously did you guys take the pre-season?
Oh, if you're a Highlanders fan, you'll love a pre-season.
Undefeated again, is that back-to-back years?
Oh, mate, we're so good in the preseason. But that's because we've only got one All Black. So, we're having to roll guys back in. And so how do you come through it? Well, you come through it hopefully unscathed, and that hasn't happened this year. There are so many injuries across the New Zealand teams. Like Wednesday, the teams will be named constantly. That's a constant this year in Super Rugby, so everyone will get to see on Wednesday. But also the injury report will come out, by my understanding, on a Wednesday as well, who's out with what. Because fantasy's become a big part of the Super Rugby program. They're launching that this year. So all of a sudden there's a bit more information out there. But there are some teams that are banged up. You'll see some sides on Wednesday and you'll go, where's so-and-so? Where's that guy? Where's that guy? We're talking shoulders. We're talking hamstrings. We're talking all sorts. So if I look at the preseason, I've literally been looking at the injury reports, trying to just get information about who's actually going to be available on week 1, which is really, I won't lie to you, it's a bit disappointing. I think this is where you get a real gauge and sense about how hard it is to prepare for a year. I'm starting to get that feeling. We're seeing it a bit more consistently now. Is that how do you prepare a team to go out and play a brutal physical game without getting too banged up, and how do you get used to it before you play a game? Whereas we've seen a lot of guys already. I think the Blues will be interesting. I don't know if you'll see Hoskins Tutu, Dalton Papali'i. We're definitely not going to see Sam Derry. I don't think Stephen Perofeta is going to be available. There's a lot of guys, already who have taken a couple of knocks. I'm not sure. There's a couple of tight hamstrings. So all of a sudden, round one could be very, very interesting. So that's what I've taken notice of. I don't read anything to the results. I just read into the actually who's fit and available and ready to go.
$2.65 for the Chiefs. Then you've sold me. Smart punters, get on now.
Wait, what? They were $2.75 about an hour ago.
Oh, there you go. So Jeff's already jumped on the Chiefs, and now it's up to everyone else.
I did get them at $2.75. I won't lie.
There you go.
that was the one that moved them.
No,
Searley,
I'm not moving markets.
Searley, we spoke about this last week that the Blues have quite a lot of depth across the park, except possibly in the locking stocks. And with Sam Derry going down, it looks like they're going to be tested right from the outset there. I guess, is that a slight concern for you when it comes to the Blues season?
Yeah, absolutely. And their skipper and Patrick Tuipulotu has probably not had an injury-free season for a couple seasons as well. Touch wood, he gets through because he's playing some great football. But, yeah, geez, if they lose him as well, then they're going really inexperienced in that locking department. And we know how important set pieces to winning games, especially against the top sides in the competition. So, yeah, Steve Devine called it. He said he was a bit worried about their locking stocks, and if they had an injury there, then that would be a massive blow to them. And then 24 hours later, the Sam Derry news comes out. So, yeah, a little bit heartbreaking there for Blues fans and for Sam Derry, because I thought his rugby last year improved massively, and he was going to be in for another big year, possibly fighting with Fabian Holland for that All Blacks locking spot in the squad. So, yeah, hopefully he can come back a little sooner than expected, but a big blow for the Blues for sure.
Right, let's get on to round one of Super Rugby Pacific 2025. And we start on Friday night with the Crusaders hosting the Canes. Bookies currently have the Crusaders as a $1.70 favourite, the Canes $2.15. They're 1.5-point favourites, the Crusaders. The game total is set at 53.5. Jeff, obviously we don't have the lineups as we record this podcast, but as you say, we know there will be a few players that won't be turning up this Friday night for either the Crusaders or the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I think the Crusaders are in a much better space than the Hurricanes injury-wise. Particularly, we've already heard, with the Hurricanes, particularly around 10. Devon Flanders now has been ruled out for a little bit of time as well. They lost TK Howden. He went down to Dunedin, who's actually also out for the Highlanders, to be fair. So he's not going to be available. So when I look at the Crusaders, look, there'll be no shortage of motivation. Let's be honest. I mean, they're trying to put last season behind them. They'll be looking forward. I see too much talent in that group for them not to have rebounded, and it'll be okay if they've got all their guys who are out there, regardless of who plays 10 for them, because that's still a question mark for them. But if you start talking about your Will Jordans and your Sevu Reeses and David Havili and Braden Enor, Dallas McLeod, look, you've got plenty of talent in the back line. And then, I know we're not going to see Cody Taylor for a while, but Bell's there. I don't know how fit and available. I think he might be out for a little bit as well. I might have heard that. I mean, there's just a lot of players that I look at and go, Scott Barrett will be there, Grace, Blackadder. I just like the fact that Crusaders at home will want to set the tone for this season. They won't be their usual slow starting self, because that's what they've done in years gone by. They'll be looking to hit the ground running. So I've got them.
Searley, the Crusaders had all sorts of injury problems last season, so you can't begrudge them getting off to as healthy a start as they can this season. In terms of the Canes, Jeff mentioned it, it's the number 10 jersey. They let Garden Bishop go up north to Moana, Pasifika. I'll tell you what, he'd be a very, very reliable cog for them to have right now, but they don't. So I guess, how do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I think Asafo Aumua's out. no Lomax, no Love, no Flanders, and then you've got the big three players which left in the off-season too. So I just think it's going to be a tough start to the season for the Canes. Crusaders at home with a point to prove. Yes, there's a gap in the 10 jersey. Like Jeff said, I still think they've got enough All Black talent there to get the dub. So, I think the Crusaders need to start this season well, just to silence all the critics which popped up last year, and I think they'll get the job done. For me, the Canes, there's just too many outs. Like that Armour and Lomax blow is the last thing they needed. They needed those two healthy this season because, like we spoke on last week, their advantage was in their forward pack. But losing those two, you're losing two quality world-class players in their positions.
Second game of the season, we head across the ditch where the Waratahs host the Highlanders. Waratahs $1.46 favourite at the moment. Highlanders $2.65. They're 5.5-point underdogs, the Highlanders here, and the total is set at 52.5. Jeff,
Jeff.
An inexperienced Highlanders side in terms of All Blacks, but if there's one man that can get them back on the right track, it's your good friend?
Yeah, look, Jamie will have been working hard on trying to prepare this team, but they're still in a situation where they're probably not experienced enough in probably a couple of key positions. And when they lost Ratamatavuki Needkins, for a big chunk, if not most of the season, it makes it really hard for them to cover their backfield. For me, Jonah Nareki's now out with a hamstring injury. And I really liked where Timothy Tavatavanawai played in the midfield last week. I thought that was going to, if Jonah Nareki was fit, I think it was going to, they're in a situation where trying to get their best players on the field and they'd moved a few around, was whether they can do that this weekend. But the pressure's really on the Waratahs here because they are the squad out of Australia that probably everyone feels as though has benefited the most out of the Rebels going out of the competition. They've picked up a lot of guys. Joseph Su'ali'i has arrived out from Rugby League. A lot of excitement around him. So you'd expect a decent crowd. The Waratahs fans, I think, will turn out. So I think it'll make it really difficult for the Highlanders. This is not the ideal start for them, but in saying that, in some ways, it allows them to go over there and get their season started. And they've actually got not too much to lose, really. The Highlanders season will be based around winning their games, as many games as they can at home. And they've got Moana Pasifika a couple of times, which will be a different challenge this year. They've got the Drua at home. There's just, I've done some maths, 7 or 8 wins will probably sneak you into this top 6. That's not easy. That's literally not easy. If you go through and find, and do the math on a lot of these games, out of 14, you've got to win over half your games. That's going to be tough. So, look, I think the Waratahs would expect to go in as favourites as they are by the bookies, and they probably should win this game. They really should. So, it means I'm backing against them, which means I get good value.
Are you getting good value, Searley?
No, I think I'm getting, $1.50, aren't I? Because I have the Waratahs in this one. I just think, like Jeff mentioned, at home, I think it's going to be a close game. But, yeah, that blow to Jonah Nareki really hurts for me, just because he's another of these guys that just unfortunately can't stay on the paddock. But whenever he plays, he's so talented. You see so much potential there. And I like the makeup of that back three with Gilbert at the back, Caleb Tangito and Nareki, with then Tavatavanawai at 12, which is a first five's worst nightmare on a drift defence. I'd be pulling a calf at the very first breakdown. I'd be avoiding that like crazy. I just think the Tars, a really stacked squad. Again, a point to prove after coming last year. They were a bit of the laughing stock of the competition. They're a proud franchise, new coaching setup, guys like Tane Edmed running the cutter, some underrated pickups alongside some superstar ones too. Yeah, I think they get the win at home. They got the bye next week as well, so a really important game for the Tars.
Next up, and these guys, well, they created a wee bit of a fortress at home last season. The Fijian Drua, they're $2.25 outsiders to start the season up against the Brumbies, who are $1.62. They're 3.5-point favourites, the Brumbies, away from home. And the points total is set at 56.5. Jeff, it's a tough start to the season for the Drua, but do you expect to see the same sort of, fight that they put up at home last season continue through to this season?
So the total points are 56.5, you said. I think that'll get blown out of the water here. I just got a sense that these two teams, will be blowing, and there'll be very little defence at some point. This is a situation where conditions play such a huge part for teams, and the Drua know what they're capable of, and either end of the game they can put on 21, 28 points quick, fast. Like I just all of a sudden the defence will break down. So I've just got a sense. What are you showing us, Searley?
I've got the weather here.
The forecast.
I've got the forecast. 31 degrees, heavy thunderstorms, 80% chance of rain.
Yeah. So that might even things up a little bit in terms of, but in terms of humidity and heat, that'll take its toll. But I don't know if that favours the Drua. I think the Brumbies, they're one of the teams for me that they're the Australian constant in Super Rugby. You just know every single year that they are going to have a squad that's consistent, understands its role. They're always well prepared. I think Stephen Larkham also knows that, if he wants to be the Wallabies coach, and he's made some huge improvements in his coaching by all accounts, this is his time to keep stepping forward. Good squad. Guys who got some really good exposure on last year's tour with Joe Schmidt in the Northern Hemisphere. And I've got guys, when you start talking about Lola Seal playing well, right at the back has been playing really, really, he's a hell of a player. Valentini, to me, there's enough there. Hooper up in the forward pack. I think the Brumbies will win this game. I just believe that they're a top six for me. They're a top six side.
Certainly, the Brumbies have been the one constant in Australian rugby when it comes to Super Rugby. They have been, if not the best, almost the best Australian team in the competition for so many years now. But Fiji, the Drua, they picked up some major scalps last season at home, so they won't be pushed out. And if there are a few thunderstorms, does that bring the two teams slightly closer together again?
I hope so. They won 6 out of 7 at home last year. They got 8 home games this year. I had them in 6th last week on our predictions, so I need them to win 7 of the 8 to make it, I'm guessing. So I'm hoping they can start the year off with one of their hardest wins. The Brumbies, like you said, so consistent, right? Every year you can almost pencil them in that 3rd to 4th spot, and they're going to be playing semi-final football. So it's a really tough ask at home to start for the Drua, but I'm just hoping this Fijian crowd's going to show out in massive numbers because it's the first game of the season against a quality side. I think the alternative point start is a smart way to go. I've teased them out in a couple multis to around a +6.5, +12.5 because I can't see them getting put away comfortably. Yeah, heart says Drua, head says Brumbies. Back your heart, always.
Are you broke?
Mate, I'm a heart better. I'm a Warriors fan, mate. Come on.
Okay, let's move on. And we've got the big grand final rematch at Eden Park on Saturday night. Well, the Blues $1.40. The Chiefs back out to $2.75. They're 5.5 point favourites, the Blues, to, I guess, do what they did in the final last year. The total set at 56.5. Jeff, are the bookies paying enough respect to the Chiefs here?
It's a very good question. I don't think so. I think their squad's really good. Going into last year's final, I think the game was really in the balance. The moment the rain came, the context of that final changed. What's the weather forecast, Searley? I imagine you'll be looking at for Saturday because what are we looking at? Because I think that will play a part once again. I think at this time of the year on top of the ground, I think the Chiefs are going to be really, really dangerous. I really do. And they've got very good depth as well. Very good depth. I mean, it's a real shame that Wallace Satiti is going to be out for the season, for their season. I think that the impact he could have had for them. But they've got guys, Sammy Penifine will be wanting to have a massive year. Luke Jacobson, you know exactly where he gets to in the way that he plays the game. He leads the squad really, really well. And, Ratama McKenzie, come on now. I mean, we're talking about 2 quality All Blacks in 2 key positions. So, Atini Nanai Satoro, no Stevenson for the first few weeks. So there's some question marks about some of their guys, but ultimately, Leonard Brown, Tupai. I mean, there's too much to like for me. Was it 275? Well, I'm just I'm looking at this. I think the Blues, I think, are a little bit banged up. I'm trying to find a way that the defending champions will be the defending champions, but I'm not sure they will be on week one. I don't think they will be. I think they may become that, but I think it'll be harder, just a little bit harder to hit this ground running. Particularly too when, like you say, no player of the year in Hoskins Tututu. And Dalton Papali'i is in doubt. There's some guys that were big parts of the way that they played last year that will be impactful. So you're still talking about a pretty impressive break three. Let's not forget. There'll be Bowden Barrett. There'll be Caleb Clark and Martelia. That's not bad. And you're playing on top of the ground and you're creating some opportunities. It's just whether or not. Here's a stat for you. Do you know how many times my understanding the word is that Rieko Ioane passed the ball last year? 13 in a whole Super Rugby season.
Wow.
And that's not because he probably didn't want to. It's just the fact he never got it. So my thing here is, what are the Blues going to play like? I'd like to see them with Bowden Barrett back. Don't try and do it all the same way as you did last year. Go out on top of the ground, see whether you can evolve a little bit. You can always go back to that other stuff.
Searley, your Blues favourites, are you keen to back them?
No. I had the Chiefs before I was even told about this Dalton thing here from Jeff. I thought it would be no Hoskins, no Sam Darry, so I was going to back the Chiefs as a value bet at $2.75. If Dalton's out as well, then I like it even more. Speaking to a few of the Chiefs lads, it's been a topic of preseason regularly, how much they got bullied in that final last year. They've got a point to prove. The forwards were told to put on some weight, put on some size in the off-season because they want to out-physical this Blues pack. They want to take them on up front and prove a point. What better way to do it than week one in a grand final rematch? $2.75. I originally had the Chiefs again at a point start in my multi, but I've just gone and changed it now just to back them in head-to-head because... yeah, I don't know. Something about Bodie coming back in too. Is that going to take a couple weeks just to reestablish everything? Like Jeff, you said there, he's starting at 15. Is that confirmed? Because he played at 10 last week. Yeah.
Well, I'm hearing that Plummer's going to be at 10.
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
That's the way that they'll run. AJ Lamb maybe at 12.
Yeah, makes sense.
And just keep an eye on Xavier Taili though. Whether or not hopefully he's on the bench, young fella. 20-year-old, 21-year-old midfielder, all class. Looking forward to seeing what impact he might have. Maybe not week one, but deeper down the track.
Right, final game. And it's the Force up against Moana Pasifika. The Force, $1.36 favourite, up against Moana Pasifika, $3.05. They're 7.5-point favourites, the Force. The game total set at 55.5. Of course, Moana Pasifika, probably the recipients of the biggest again in the off-season with Ari Savea joining Moana Pasifika, along with a few others. Of course, Solomon Alaimalo returning from the NRL. Garden Bishop, of course, also heading up from the Canes up to Moana Pasifika. So this is, although it wasn't a trade, this is like Luka Doncic heading to the Lakers here, Jeff.
Yep. Adi Savea going up to Moana and what they've established there. They've got a home base at North Harbour Stadium. I think that's important. They're going to play a few games there. They have recruited quite nicely. They've got a few guys out of the international squads as well to give them a little bit more depth. Look, if you're going to, if you want to be a playoff team, you've got to look at the Force as a massive opportunity. The Force are probably the one Australian team that probably hasn't strengthened up out of the changes that have happened there. So, I'd like to think Moana, if you're going to make a mark, this is the time to make your mark in week one. Get yourself some confidence. You've got a huge chance to win away on the road. You go ahead and do that. The Force to me are that unknown Australian team. They're niggly to play in Perth for whatever reason. Every team that goes there, they really struggle to get the job done. So I actually don't know where to go on this one. I really don't. I'm going to go Moana on the hope that the leadership and the change and what they've brought in is going to be enough.
Searley, you giving Moana Pasifika a chance in game one?
Absolutely. 3.05, like you mentioned, head-to-head, $4, 1 to 12. I do think it will be a close game. Like Jeff said, going to Perth isn't easy. At the same time, I think if you're going to go there, it's probably fresh and first up. I think they go to Brisbane from there, so they're not coming back to New Zealand after as well, which certainly helps. Yeah, I think Moana, like you said, Jackson Garden-Bishop, probably one of the most underrated pickups of the year, and he'll do wonders for their game as well. And then, of course, the Adi Savea factor. Like Jeff said, I think if they're serious about playing playoffs this year, this is a game they will want to pick up. I have the Force coming last, so I certainly hope they pick it up as well. Yeah, that's some good odds for me. So, yeah, if you give me $3, I'll take that.
Right, it's time to put some money where our words are. And last week, myself, Searley, and Steve Devine put our futures bets for the season up. We're going to give Jeff the opportunity now to put his futures bets up for season 2025. Jeff, where you going?
It's an interesting one. I've only got a couple of minutes left. I've got another call I've got to go on to, but I'll quickly give you where they are. And this is the Player of the Year is an interesting one in futures. The Player of the Year, right? So we've got a Player of the Year in Super Rugby, which is voted on by the coach and captain of the opposition team, right? So you're picking players from the opposition sides, and Adi Savea is a hot favourite because you clearly think he'll be one of the best week in, week out. But all of a sudden, there'll be some guys and some teams who have massive, massive years. So I've gone as rough as anything here, just for interest's sake, because I think a guy like Tom Wright for the Brumbies is paying $201, right? But if you think about it, $201 for a guy who plays well every single week at Super Rugby level, has an impact on the game, picking up points. He's probably not going to get rested. Maybe Adi Savea might not play every game. At $201, just have a little nibble. Why wouldn't you just have a wee hit on that? It's the same with them with Rob Valentini with the Brumbies. Every single week, Rob Valentini, $81 to win the Player of the Year.
Holy.
Yeah, just these are points from coaches. I've gone deep in here. I was scrolling down as low as I possibly can. You've got the guys who you think, but might get banged up. Whereas these two guys, they're out of a Brumbies team, hard to play in Canberra. All of a sudden, the opposition coach and captain looking over, going, "Yeah, they're good every week," you know. And that's going to be a real challenge for a lot of these guys. And the other futures I've gone for is. Look, I think the Blues and Chiefs are the best teams in the comp. So a rematch of the finalists is at $3.25. So I've got a little bit of nibble, just $10 on Wright and Valentini. And then the other one I've gone is the Chiefs Crusaders final at $10.
Oh.
The Chiefs Crusaders final with the Crusaders still having all of that quality. I think they're a side that could make it at $10. So I like that for me. Those are my futures. Wright and Valentini for Player of the Year. Got a couple of options there. Blues, Chiefs finalists. Chiefs, Crusaders finalists. A little bit random. A little bit.
I think Jeff has made pick and go history here by being the first tipster to tip out a $200 shot. Man.
Yeah.
Starting Wallaby fullback.
Yeah, I like it though because it's one of those things. The Brumbies beat you, and it's off the back of some Tom Wright magic or Rob Valentini just dominating every collision. Those are two guys that stand out in that team. And if the Brumbies rack up wins, as an opposition player, you're thinking, who did I not enjoy playing against in that team? And it's those two. So you've sold me, Jeff.
Goldie, you've got to get out of here. Have you? You flick
your
bets for this week through to me if you don't have time to say them right now.
No.
Yeah.
Chiefs on the nose. 275.
The whole 100.
The whole 100. 275. That's where I'm going. Good luck, man.
Very
luck.
good.
Go well, Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay, Searley.
Wow, that.
He really did dig. He dug deep there. Tom Wright and Valentini. That's some good research done by our good friend Jeff Wilson. Right now, what sort of research have you done in terms of week one of Super Rugby Pacific 2025?
Yeah, I've come up with a new strategy this year, Paulie. I'm coming for the crown. And last year, your miracle swing rattled the competition. And it's still controversial because you said the wrong names, but we gave it to you. So this year, I'm going $50 on two safe multis here, which I think. So I'm going the Canes and the Tars head-to-head, $2.48, $50 on that. Then I'm spending my $50 split, the rest of my 50. I'm going $30 on the Drua plus 6.5 and Moana plus 7.5 at $3.08. And then I'm going $20 on the perfect round. And I've just changed this live after Jeff's intel. So by the time the listeners are hearing this, maybe the teams are out. I'm not sure. But $20 on the perfect round. I'm going to do this every week because I figured if I hit 2 or 3 throughout the season, I'll probably win the comp. So I've gone Crusaders head-to-head, Tars head-to-head, Chiefs head-to-head, Drua plus 12.5, Moana plus 10.5. That's paying $14.19, $20 on that. I'm going to win the comp this year, Paulie.
Gee, I love the confidence, Searley. This is great. But remember, it's a fairly long season, so no need to sprint out of the blocks. Just take it easy.
I'm like that one dog who shoots out the box. Everyone expects him to be pulled back, and he just keeps on going. Well, hopefully I am anyway. Either that or I miss the jump completely. We'll soon find out, mate. I'm just gutted. Pity's not here to give us Cam Roigard 3 tries, paying $101.
I'm glad you mentioned Pity because he's sent his picks through to me. So I'll let you know exactly what Pity's betting on this weekend. He's got a $50 multi to kick things off. Canes, Landers, Chiefs, and Moana all to win.
Wow, what's that paying?
I haven't put it through yet.
That would be juicy. Maybe he's outdone me there.
Then he's gone a $25 multi. Canes to win by 12 and under. Tars to win by 12 and under, which is very interesting because he's taken the Landers to win in the other multi. But anyway, Canes 12 and under, Tars 12 and under, Moana Pasifika to win by 13 or more against the Western Force. $25 on that multi, and he had $25 left. He's taking the Canes to win straight up at $2.15.
So all his bets could be over by 9:30 on Friday night. It's all riding on game one. Love it.
Okay, I'll go a couple of multis. I'm going to go Crusaders to win at $1.70, into the Tars to win at $1.46, into the Chiefs to win at $2.75. I'm going to put $50 on that multi, and then I'm going to put a try-scoring multi. Now, the teams haven't been named yet, so the bookies haven't got those try-scoring markets up as we speak, but I will have a $50 multi on. And look, I'm going to have Caleb Clark in there to score a try on Saturday night against the Chiefs.
So just confirming that was Caleb Clark, not Ronnie Clark. You're going Caleb. Okay.
Caleb Clark to score a try, and Will Jordan to score a try against the Hurricanes on Friday night. So just a couple of try scorers there.
Ronnie Clark and Michael Jordan. I like it.
Yeah, we've got to get those names right, Searley.
Come on, mate.
Right. That's it. That's it for another episode of the Pick and Go. You heading along to the Blues game on Saturday night, Searley, or you busy?
Yeah, potentially. It's either that or Warriors Storm down in Hamilton, that trial game. But I am pretty keen to head along to that grand final rematch. So, are you going along?
Yes, I'll be there.
Perfect.
So looking forward to, as you say, I still don't think the bookies are paying the Chiefs enough respect. And if I look at it, I go, well, they've got more, I guess, incentive because they got beaten in the grand final, whereas the Blues can just sort of, I'm not saying they're going to take it easy, but I think losing is a very, very strong driver for you to then succeed next time. So
100%. I think those odds will change once the teams are named quite dramatically. So if you're listening to this and you're on the fence and you think the Chiefs are a good shout after all that info from Jeff there and that chat from us, then I think it is pretty smart punting to get them before team naming, because I wouldn't be surprised if they come back to fairly even.
There we go. You heard it first here.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
For another episode of the Pick and Go podcast. We'll be back again next week. Well, I'll be back. I'm pretty sure Searley will be back. Maybe Pity Weepu will be back as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back again next week.